I'm Michelle Gussow, and this is something straight out of my mind. Hi. So it's official. Yahoo Groups is no more. Now, I know that is official as of December 15th. I don't know when this video is actually going to first be uploaded, but that's it. That the end of an era. And what's interesting is, first of all, I was back with Yahoo Groups when they started out, and they were called Yahoo Clubs. Now, if we go back to the internet at that time, you had Yahoo Clubs and something called e-groups, and at some point they merged. And I actually remember people weren't happy with that. The club people didn't like the feel of the groups, and the people who'd had e-groups didn't like to adjust to all the stuff that the clubs had. But eventually, I guess everybody got used to it. I don't know when the demise started. I know that people were using Yahoo Groups less and less and less. Probably when other social media platforms came along and you have groups within those platforms, like Facebook and MeWe, all these things, they have groups you can start. But I had all these groups, they were up there. And I think what happened with me is, back when I first got online and I started writing fan fiction, I was looking for any place to share the links to the stories, and I found these clubs, and there'd be clubs for the Big Valley, because that was where I'd started my fanfic writing. And I think I did find some. I was kind of surprised. There was a club on there for Peter Breck, one for Lee Majors. They actually didn't have one for Richard Long, and I started one, and that got a lot of attention. I started something called Michelle's Fanfiction Club, which was a club where people could come and post links to their stories and help people find other stories they were looking for, things like that. And one day I was looking at, I forget how many stories I'd actually written at this time, and I realized that as far as characters, I was writing a lot about Eugene Barclay. Now, if you're familiar with the series, there was this obscure brother in the very first season named Eugene, played by an actor named Charles Briles, and he didn't have a credit at the beginning of the show, and he just kind of disappeared after that first season. You don't, no explanation. Just I kind of said he was like the Chuck Cunningham of the Big Valley. He just gone. And I liked writing about him because the TV series had not really developed the character, and so I thought it was easy pickings. I could. He was ripe to be developed and learn something more about him and his relationship to, Jared and Nick especially, because he grew up with them. And I started thinking about it, and I thought, it would be fun. I'm going to go into the clubs, and I'm going to create a club. And I called it Eugene Barclay, the Forgotten Barclay Brother, or something along those lines. That's pretty terrible. I haven't been in there in so long that I don't even remember what I called my own club. And I posted about it in the Richard Long Club that I had created and some other things. And I actually had a few people join, but other people were telling me, why did you do that? Why would you bother? Nobody's going to join this club. And I explained what I had just told you, that, I like to write about him because it's a character I can develop, and maybe somebody else would be interested. I just wanted to see what would happen. And after however many years, I had about 20 people, and that was fine, and it was fun. And if I had new stories, I'd post about him in there. And then something started to happen and by this time it was groups that tended to happen. And if you had a group or were in them, you'll remember. People would start joining these groups just to post ads for enhancing body parts you didn't have, or matchmaking services. I mean, they were just, it was a constant thing. And in some of the groups, I made it so you now had to send a request to be a member. But there were people in there, and I didn't really want to keep doing that, and I didn't want to moderate the people who were already there. So what I was doing was I set it up so that new members were going to be moderated, and I was nice about it. I made the announcement. I said, I really hate to have to do this, but I'm going to have to at least put new members on moderated status, because getting too many people joining, and I have to come in and take the ads out and all that. And everybody was pretty much behind it. Yeah, you do what you have to do. Yeah, we appreciate it. So there was a feature where you could send a message to the administrator, and I got this like crazy message, crazy, after I'd done this, and it was said in reference to this, and it was just a rant. I hope you don't mean me, because anything I say in this group is going to be the truth, and on and on. And I was like, what on earth is this? Oh my, huh? And I said, you know what, okay, so I'll just leave it as long as they don't cause any trouble in the actual conversation. Fine. Let it go. Never thought another thing about it. And I don't know how many weeks, months later it was, but I had gone out of town for a weekend to direct a short film. And at the time, we didn't have the smartphones, and I didn't have a laptop, nothing. I was offline for the entire weekend. Go, direct the film, come back. I have to catch up on tons of emails and see what's going on in these groups. And I go to this Eugene Barclay group, and all heck had broken loose over the weekend. I'm going, scrolling to find where it all started. This person who had lost, I didn't know it was his or her at the time, mind over this moderating thing, had come out as Charles Briles, the actor who played Eugene. And of course, in my absence too, everybody else descended on him. And, essentially with, I hope you don't mind if we don't believe you right off. And they put him through the ringer. They put him through a test. And by the time I returned and looked at the group, they had decided, yes, this is indeed Charles Briles. The other interesting thing that happened with that was, I thought for sure somebody was going to go to one of their other big Valley groups and say, hey, come over to the Eugene Barclay group. Charles Briles is actually in there. And that never happened. That was interesting. It became like this, okay, people didn't want to join before. Well, it's our secret now. And I think the group members had a lot of fun knowing he was in there. And he did interact with them. I didn't interact with him, and I have to say that the few interactions I did have with him, it's very sad. I feel like he was starting to have dementia, because, I talked in a previous video about how I was identified as Jared Sis. That was my Yahoo ID. It was my email. And he kept seeing that and saying, I see that, it reminds me of the Big Valley. I'm like, and I had explained to him the story of that a couple times and explained, yeah, it's from the Big Valley. Yes. So I don't know what was happening. He sadly passed away in 2016. And so maybe something was wrong. Ironically, he shared a birthday with Richard Long. So maybe they're hanging out together again. But maybe it was fun having him there. It was kind of interesting because it was an implication that he had read some of the fanfic I'd written. And I don't know how I feel about that. But it's the end of an era. And rest in peace, Charles Briles, and rest in peace, Yahoo Groups. I'll see you next time. There's something straight out of my mind.